Brian, how are you, sir?
I am doing amazing, thank you.
It's great to hear. I very rarely get that response. I can usually get like, I'm fine.
Amazing.
Amazing. Listen, you're dealing with AI. I had a Representative Jeff Ehlers in here recently, and he's on the AI commission for the state, but you're actually integrating AI, a safe AI version, into education. Now, this is particularly interesting to me because I had Reed Stephan in recently, who's working on digital literacy. He's part of the Idaho Technology Council, and he's working on AI in education, technology in education, how we integrate it, and what relationship we want to have with it. One example he brought up really quickly was, we all know that AI is going to be important, but what questions you ask AI, how you engineer the prompts, how you tweak the question just right so you get the most valuable answer. It's like, look, I got a hammer, right? You got to know how to use the hammer just right. And if you use the hammer just right, you can go through things quickly. If you don't, then it's not really a benefit to you. You're working with the College of Western Idaho. You're integrating AI. Talk to me about the AI, what you're doing, and what the goal is.
Yeah, and it's not just the College of Western Idaho, but they're definitely our biggest regional client that we're working with. And essentially what our platform is, GuardRailz with the Z, is it is a fully integrated AI platform that has not just the large language models, which is your ChatGPT and Claude that people are familiar with, but we've also got media integration. So we've got images. You can draw pictures and turn your pictures into art. You can do animations and even music. And we're putting all of that in because what's surprising is the media helps people do exactly what you were just talking about. When you're trying to make an image exactly the way you want it, you start to learn how to use AI better than when you're talking to it as a large language model. But what we're doing is we're making it easy for people who are novices, first time using AI, all the way up to advanced engineers that want to control every little aspect of it and be able to do really, really advanced things. Because there's a lot of educators that are new to AI that are having to work with it with their students. And we want to make it easy for the educators to learn how to use it so that they can then work with the students to learn how to use it. So the AI literacy isn't just for students, it's for the educators too.
Sure.
And that's a really big part of what we're doing is both sides of the coin there.
A large concern that most people have when you start talking about AI in education is that they think the student-generated work is going to be replaced or augmented significantly by the AI, right? And this applies to, like, you have to write an essay on Benjamin Franklin or something.
Yep.
And you get the AI to write the essay. Now, of course, people started running it through screening programs like, okay, we believe this was AI generated. Right. And then the next step, and again, talking to a buddy of mine who's a Board of Education guy, he's like, well, kids started realizing that if they got it from AI the first time, essentially the teacher had a certain probability of catching up. But what they would do is they'd run it through 3 or 4 different AIs, take the essay, run it through slightly change this, slightly change this, slightly change this. They do it 3 or 4 times. They get an essay that is not attributable to one single AI. And so the screening process wouldn't even pick it up. And so then you're like back to square one, where everybody's turning in pretty good essays or high quality essays that they tweak to tone down the quality on. So it actually reflects a 16-year-old's writing. And it's like, it's a train wreck, right? So that's what people predominantly talk about when they talk to me. They're like, well, you're just going to have a bunch of kids that are using AI to get their work done.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that came up early in our, we went and spoke to a lot of different colleges.
Sure.
And there was a president of the university came up with this idea that we integrated in basically the next day. He said, listen, I don't care if students use AI to write their essays. What I care about is, do they understand what the essay says? Do they understand the content? So we literally built in a part of our application is an assessment mode where you upload your essay and it basically creates an instant pop quiz on your essay. So, hey, in paragraph 2, line 3, you said this, but that conflicts with what you said in paragraph 5, line 1. Explain how you came to the conclusion that these are both accurate. Whatever that may be. Obviously, that's just a made-up scenario. But the idea being that, do you actually understand the content? So it doesn't matter if you had AI help you write something. Do you understand what it wrote? That's the real question.
Now, would that be something, okay, first off, I dig what you're saying. It seems crazy for somebody to say, I don't care who wrote it. I care if they understand the content. I get what you're saying.
Don't care is a little extreme, but the premise being, do they understand what it wrote is more important than what it wrote.
Right. With that, let's say you get a pop quiz. Is that something where you submit this essay and the teacher runs it through the system and the system comes up with a pop quiz and it's like, okay, you turned in this essay. And gosh, man, the essay looks great. I really like this. Can you go ahead and answer these 5 questions about it?
It's instant. So the AI creates the pop quiz based upon the objectives. So when you, and this is one of the key differentiators about what our platform is because it's focused on education. So there's lesson mode, there's tutor mode, and there's assessment mode. And if you're uploading your work through assessment mode, it instantly reviews what are the objectives of this assignment or what are the objectives of this class or whatever the educator put in there. And it then will create the pop quiz based upon what they just uploaded in real time. So it's upload file. Great. Here's my first question. And it will ask the question right then and there, and then provide the answers to the educator to look in their dashboard.
Okay. So the educator then gets to say like, okay, this person submitted this essay, but we gave that person 10 questions and they were only able to correctly answer 2. Odds of this person actually writing this essay are very, very slim.
Exactly.
So then is the grade that, well, I suppose educators would get to decide with, however they want to grade it. But
now what do they want to do? Human in the loop, educator in the loop is extremely critical. This is a tool to help them to ascertain whether or not that student understood what they uploaded, but it's not a deciding factor. At least it's not designed to be the deciding factor. It's designed to be a tool to help them understand what that student really understands.
So bottom line is we come down to a broader question of like, what's the purpose of even writing the essay? Because you have a twofold mechanism, which is education mechanism, which is we're going to enhance your capacity to communicate, which is very, very important. And we're going to be able to gauge very specifically whether or not you understand information, right? Those are 2 obviously completely separate byproducts of, or excuse me, targets of having somebody write an essay.
Right.
So it's like, okay, even if we could get somebody to say, okay, you understand whatever's in this essay, you're 10 for 10 on the pop quiz. How do you get around the failure of, or the lack of necessity to be able to generate that effective communication? Because for instance, I was a rhetoric major, okay, in college. I went in as a math major, loved math, switched to rhetoric halfway through because I had to take this remedial writing course and I was like terrible at writing and actually fell in love with writing, which is great. And so much of what I do now is my capacity to formulate communication, right? Like that's my only skill set. It's like I have no other discernible skill. And that's really important. And I would not have had to go through that struggle of like the pain of just being like, oh, what? And it's a multimedia pain. For instance, making social media clips. I have a certain success rate with my social media clips, say it on Instagram or YouTube or whatever it is. And it's because I harvest out sentiment. I harvest out a segment that might be a 90-second segment, and I can distill that down to like, okay, but what is the actual point here? What am I actually trying to get across to the viewer? And I never manipulate people's stuff. The question is, okay, is this 2-second thing, is this actually necessary to the overall idea? And so I will distill down something that say could be start at 60 seconds down to like 17 seconds. And it's the most potent message possible. Right? I took out all the ums, all the pauses, all the thin, all the stripped it all down. That's effective communication. So with your model of, does the person understand this? Okay, yeah, you can determine that. But how do we replace the communication generation?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry, I know that's a really big question.
No. I think that it comes back to the whole idea of what the key things are with AI right now and generative AI. And I fall into the same loop that or trick that everybody else is, which is just calling everything that's AI. But really, we're talking about generative AI.
Sure.
And really, the key is how do you communicate with it? And communicating with the AI and telling it what you want it to do and what you want the results to be. That's going to be, I think, the most important skill anybody in any field has.
A prompt engineer.
A prompt engineer.
Yes.
And that is, I'm actually teaching a class at CWI that's called AI Foundations, and I teach a method that I came up with called CART. It's context, audience, results, and transitions. And if you can nail those 4 things and understand that you need to make sure that it understands it being the generative AI, needs to understand the context, know what the audience is. It could be you, it could be, for social media, etc. What is the result? What am I looking for? Am I looking for an essay? Am I looking for another prompt? Whatever it is,
sure.
What is the result? And then transition. Basically, kind of like the old improv, yes, and. It's kind of what the transitions are. Yes, and I also want you to do this. And I want this. And I want that. And having those 4 things has been really helpful because there's new models every week. And I think it's really, I mean, part of my job is just reviewing what the latest AI models are. There's been 3 major announcements just this week so far. And if you know how to talk to the AI, it doesn't matter what model you're talking to. You'll be able to get the results you want. Maybe not the first shot, but you'll be able to get to where you want to go. And that communication is the new communication standard. You use that and you can get the essay the way you know. Now, you still need to know what an essay is. So you can't not know the fundamentals. You need to know the fundamentals to be able to know what you want. So that R for the results, to be able to specifically say, I want an essay that's a 5-paragraph classic structure with, this amazing opening. And this is the key point that I want to make. You have to know what it is you want to be able to communicate with the AI to get it to do what you want. I think that's the key lessons that need to be taught going forward.
There's a similar parallel concept that's very easily observable even within, let's just say, like computer science, right? So like everything on my MacBook does ultimately come down to ones and zeros, right? Yep. But I never interact with those ones and zeros because we've made computer languages, programming languages that I can interact with that know how to make the ones and zeros work. But if you were the original computer programmer, you're dealing with like ones and zeros and little things like that, right? Somebody had to get their hand in the nasty bucket at some point to move away from the ones and zeros, right? And you see the same thing with, something else people could relate with very easily, creation of websites. Like when I was in 7th grade, or it was 7th grade or 8th grade, I got this HTML for kumquats, or kumquat HTML, whatever it was. Over the summer, I read this whole book, and we're talking like 1995, right? And so I program manually this website where it's like I got to deal with, margins, and I'm dealing with percents, or I'm dealing with placements, all these different things. And in short, and it's this really cool thing. And I make this website. I'm like so proud of it. I'm like, yeah, this is like me in my room, coding away. And within like 3 or 4 years, they had drag and drop website design. Yep. And I was like, son of a...
That's so much easier.
Right. And now, like I put together the ranchpodcast.org website, and it took me like just a few hours, and I was able to put things. It's like you never touch a line of code again. Do you envision our education system tending more towards a drag and drop format, which is like, listen, you're never going to have to get your hands dirty writing a 12-page essay again. What you're going to have to do is get really good at aggregating sources of information that you instruct an AI model to draw from and understanding what that information and what that output is. But like, you're just dragging and dropping because let's face it, like nobody's ever coding a website again. Right. You don't ever have to code. It's going to be drag and drop. This is how we expect you to, interact with the employment sector.
Not a lot of typewriters being sold right now.
No, absolutely not. Nobody's changing the ribbon ever again.
Exactly. And that's where it's going to get to. It's just that evolution. What's really, I think, scary about this is when we went to the internet, it took a while for the adoption. And when we went to smartphones, it took about 5 to 8 years really for it to be kind of where everybody had a smartphone. And now, of course, it's like an appendage. But when generative AI came out, it came out through an item that everybody already had. The distribution was 100%. You didn't have to wait 10 years, 15 years, any time for everybody to have some access to this new tool. And because of that, the adoption is through the roof faster than anything we've ever seen. And as a result, I think it's the natural progression, typewriters to computers and computers to internet. And as we're going, it just happened really fast because the distribution was near instant. We have 5G. Everybody has a device in their hand at all times that can do these things, and they can see the results of it instantly. Okay, game changer for everybody all at once. And as a result, why wouldn't it be the next progression that everybody's using because it's so much faster and much more efficient?
Well, I would say it's not going to make the 12-year-old a genius because the 12-year-old still has to go through the learning process. First off, the 12-year-old has to develop discrimination, right? Or discerning. right? Like you have to be able to figure out if something's hitting the mark or not, if it's good or if it's bad. And that takes a lot of consumption, right?
That's the human element. There has to be that human
That's
loop.
right.
There has to be that human element.
Right. And we have to train and educate humans up to the point where they can wield a hyper complex, super powerful thing effectively and consistently.
And like you said, know when it's right. Know when it's something that's good. Just because you say, I want you to write the next Godfather doesn't mean it's going to do it.
Right.
Right. You know, it's going to go off those ones and zeros and it's going to create the algorithm or use the algorithm and write something that's, you know, mimicking. But if you want to really do something right, you have to have that human element.
Yeah. And it doesn't, like, I have a friend who's working on a business model, and it's like, you can't just tell it, write me a business model. Right. Like, and it may even give you great ideas, but failure to execute on those ideas, again, bringing back the human element. You know, like what's interesting to me is I find people's desire to say this will be a cure-all is like, everybody knows if they eat nothing but boiled chicken and steamed broccoli, they'd be like as thin as they could ever want in the world. But there's a degree of human action there that's like, that's not how this works, right? Like you may have a great business model, or you may have a great business plan, or you may have a great whatever. You're still going to need humans at some point putting it in action. So although it may give a lot of ideas, I think well, let me ask you this. Are you an optimistic about AI integration, or are you a pessimist? Like, we're all going to be replaced by robots.
I mean, we're not going to be replaced by robots, but we are going to be much more efficient as individuals with these tools. And so one person's going to do more. And either that means that people who don't learn it are going to be left behind, or if they learn it, they're going to be more efficient and we're going to have more efficient people. And we don't even know what that's going to look like to have that much more of an efficient workforce. So instead of having 100 people that are doing the work to get whatever the work is
whatever
done,
the result is,
right, we're using 40 at a much more highly efficient rate. That doesn't mean those other 60 need to lose their job. It means that if they learn how to use more advanced tools or create more advanced tools with what's available, now those 100 are doing the work of 400 people.
Right.
It's not cutting it down. It's accelerating what everybody can do.
Did you, to that end, when around inauguration time, there was a big commentary about the size of the federal government, and they make Doge, and you know, everybody's like, we're going to cut down on employees, fraud, waste, and abuse. That's the big three. And there were articles going around saying like, hey, we actually have it was like the same size federal government, or number of federal employees are like slightly smaller than 40 years ago. We're already, you know, all of these things. And what I found interesting, it's like, yeah, but how much more efficient the 2 million people now compared to the 2 million people in the 70s, the 2 million people now have email, bro. Like they're doing an ungodly amount of work. So it's like, you can't compare somebody from 50 years ago, an employee from 50 years ago is not, you know, like texting 20 people at once, running AI, you know, things like doing all of this stuff. Like it's not a fair comparison.
Not even close. Not even close. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's where I think that digital literacy, AI literacy is going to absolutely be the most important, you know, literacy going forward in workforce. I mean, any job, every job. And we're even talking at CWI, they're looking at doing some collaborations with some of their skilled labor part of like diesel mechanics can use AI to help them diagnose problems, and they can learn how to do it by working with an AI that will like, no, try this and try this. And that's one of the other things, kind of circling back to what we're really doing is we're making sure that the AI isn't just giving answers. And that's one of the key things about having an educationally focused platform is that if you go on the platform and ask it a question, it won't necessarily give you the answer. It will start to guide you through the thought process. Well, first let's think about this. Then let's think about this. Now, what do you think the answer is? Yep, that seems right. So it's actually more of a tutor assistant than it is just a do-it-for-you assistant. Now, there's also do-it-for-you aspects too, but that's in the weeds as far as when those come into play and when they don't and who it's for and all that. But every facet is going to have these pieces in it, just like every facet has some connection to mobile technology at this point. Sure. And so if you don't have that awareness, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I've been speaking to schools all around the country, and big credit to President Jones at CWI for being, forward thinking on this.
Sure.
There are some schools that are not, this isn't even on the radar yet. And it's scary to talk to some of these schools, and they don't even think of it as mission critical.
Well, because what is their perspective then? Like, you go to Acme University, and Acme University is like, nah, I don't really care about AI. No, we're not integrating the curriculum. And no, I don't even address it with student-generated work right now.
Yeah, they are basically, well, we know it's being used. Some teachers are using it, and it's just another tool. And right now we're focused on other things that we have to deal with budget this and budget that. And we got a new payment system, or we got to do this, and it's so that's just not important. And there are others that completely get it. Again, CWI being one of them, but some of the ones that don't get it, it's scary. And then you've got, and this is the one college I'm thinking of in particular. In California, they just announced that every single student at CSUs and UCs are going to have an OpenAI account starting next year. So that was the first, basically, like, system-wide. Mind you, CWI had it before them, just saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Had a full AI integration for all faculty and students. But just the juxtaposition of institutions getting it and then institutions not getting it is I think, going to determine which institutions really make it.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about the creative element with this AI, because creativity is a big piece, right, of the human experience. And for some reason, I've been thinking a lot about comedians, which is like, if you could get somebody to write jokes for you that you knew were on point, you're like, write me a joke like, Rogan, write me a joke like Chappelle, write me a joke like all these things. You could get jokes instantaneously, no problem.
It's not going to make you Dave Chappelle.
It's not going to make you Dave Chappelle. That's the piece. That's the human element, where it's like, you got to have delivery. You got to have consistency.
Timing.
You got to, like, the whole thing. It's like, you can get all of the intellectual part, which is like figuring out the hook, the callback, the this, that. You could have an hour special that you get written up for you, but you still have to integrate that intellectual property with a human experience. And I think that goes to just really point out how different our everyday happenings really are for people than like, oh, AI will have all the answers. It's like, that it's irrelevant. Like, I could get the jokes. It doesn't mean I could go to an open mic and crush.
That is such a great analogy. It really is a great analogy. You have to, there is something called talent, and there is, and there is this, an instinct. And these are the things that we're never going to get AI to do. AI is a tool.
Right.
It's a really good tool, and it can really help us accelerate what we're doing, but it's an acceleration of productivity tool. It is not a replacement tool.
Right. Right. And it's not going to be able to be up there in front of the lights. It's not going to get, like, it's not going to help you get over being nervous. Like, I just feel like the concept of success and the path to success in the human state is so much more complex than, like, it's like driving. You could have a map that tells you how to get somewhere. It doesn't mean you can drive well. Right.
Very, very
all
true.
I do is I have my directions. It's like, okay, my 11-year-old could jump in my car with my phone, and it's like, these are the directions. It's like, okay, but you don't know how to even get there. You know the path, but it's not solving the problem for you. And, I guess with education in particular, I get worried that people are going to replace the directions with, like, you can actually go down that path.
We have this tool that we show, and I like to show educators this because I really get an aha moment when I'm doing a training session with educators. And I have this tool where it's got 4 blocks, and each one of the blocks is a different AI model. And one of them is already pre-configured as a specialty AI bot / assistant. And it's all about Star Wars. It's all it'll talk about.
Oh my God, my 13-year-old would die for this.
He
would die for this.
But the other ones are up to you. So if you ask, so I show this in my presentations. I show a question. I say, okay, what are the 5 most important moments in history? And you can have OpenAI 4.0 and OpenAI 0.1, and then use Claude.
Right.
And each one of them, even the two that are from the same company, will come up with a completely different list of what the 5 most important things are. The Star Wars one will list 5 important moments from Star Wars history, and not the real history, the narrative history. So it'll say when the Galactic Empire did this and when this happened. So it will. So it's all about that context. If you don't understand that, you're going to go down the wrong path. And that's why that prompt engineering is so important. Understanding context matters. Understanding the audience matters. What you're asking it to do matters. But yeah, I mean, okay, now I've got the, let me copy from ChatGPT or from this bot that's pre-done on Star Wars. And it's, okay, these are the 5 most important. You need to know that's wrong.
Right.
You need to know that these 3 different AI models, the other 3 are giving you completely different lists, because it's going to answer the question, but it's got completely different context. Mistral, which is a great model, is based out of France. It has different answers. If you ask a question about CA, depending on where you are, it might answer for Canada or it might answer for California. You got to think. I was doing another training with teachers, and they said, okay, they were writing directions for a bot, and they said, I want this to be helpful for seniors who are struggling. And I went, seniors in high school or seniors who are people who are over 65? What are we talking about here? You have to be specific, and really learning that aspect of it. That's the key. But again, you've got to have that intuition. You've got to have that human in the loop feeling to know what's right and what's wrong as far as the context goes. That is so important.
One of my tutoring clients from a long time ago had the original patent for the digital camera. And when I met him, they were going through a series of lawsuits from out of like Michigan or something, because that was like the most tech-friendly court. I can't remember exactly, but there was one specific state where they were working with this judge and suing Kodak and suing like all the.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't Kodak the first one that? Okay, yeah, I got
yeah.
you. There's a story there. Got it.
Yeah, so it's a really, and so again, that's the level of tech savviness and tech background this guy had. And I was working with his daughter on some tutoring stuff. And really enjoyed him and loved hearing his stories. And they had us over, my wife and I, over for dinner one night, and he was telling us about, and again, he was working on cutting edge optics stuff. Like he was doing everything. At one point, the investors came. They're like, we want to see this camera outside. And it was all like a compilation of parts. Nothing was put together. They were just trying to get the mechanics to work, and they had never done it outside. So they go outside and try to take a picture of a car, and like all these rays are coming off the car. And they're like, oh, I guess light rays are like all these different things, right? Cool stories. But what he said at one point is he had interviewed a gal, I think from Singapore, and she had gone through this university system that he was like, it was hands down the most rigorous, insane education he had ever witnessed somebody go through. And it was like they studied for 16 hours a day, took 2 hours personal time, slept 6 hours, 7 days a week. They were machines. And he said he provided this woman who was applying for a job with him. He provided this woman with some questions, like math questions, science questions. And she, like a machine, worked through every single one perfectly, returned it. And he was like, and he told me, he was like, listen, I've met Bill Gates. I've met all these people. He was like, when I say this woman was smart, she was smart. And I was like, okay, cool, man. Like, did you hire her? Ultimately, what he said to figure out if she was a right fit or not is he took all the answers. He's like, okay, these are all 100% right. And he provided her with a question that did not have a right answer. And she like broke. She refused to answer it. And he's like, I need an answer. And there isn't. And she was like, well, okay, I can tell you what can happen here, and I can tell you what would happen here. He's like, I know. So what do we do? And ultimately, he said he couldn't hire her because he knew that in the actual human creative process, she would fall apart. And that her inability and refusal to participate in this nebulous, chaotic world that is creation, she would not be a valuable asset. And that I was like 27 when I heard that. And that to me, it's a conversation and a thought that I always come back to with AI, which is, look, the human in the loop will still have to have people that even if they get every answer to any question that can be answered right and wrong, you're still going to have people that make a call in the absence of a right answer. And that will always be something that like you'll never be able to train an AI or a human to do. It's like, you got to figure it out, man.
That's exactly it. The go, no go for launch.
Right?
That's
no. Like, you got to make a call.
You got to make that decision.
By the way, somebody's life's on the line.
Right.
Make a call.
Right. Right.
God, man.
And use that gut instinct,
Yes.
that human instinct, not the ones and zeros, not the, well, if it's above this level and who's making the, sometimes you just got to do it. And I actually think that folks like that young lady that you're describing are the ones who are going to have the hardest time in this new generative AI verse world, because the creativity, actually, one of the reasons I think that I've been able to find so much, I was actually in the entertainment industry when I got into AI. I actually got into it through the entertainment industry, working in casting and working with an early AI company. And I was fascinated by it. And their CTO gave me some guidance on how to start getting into it. So I got into it about 2017 is when I first started getting into generative AI. But I've been a writer. I've been working in the creative arts. And I think that's really, really why I've been able to create such good prompts and do prompt engineering at the level I've been able to do it, because it isn't binary. It has to have creativity. You have to know how to be able to create these things. It is an art. It is not a science. And learning that and being able to start molding and creating it your own way is going to be that critical aspect. I mean, I just can't stress enough how much doing the prompt engineering is going to be so important in the future, which is why that, as I mentioned right in the beginning, the image tool has been so helpful for people to learn how to do prompt engineering, because they'll type in bunny rabbit. Okay, well, just gives them a bunny rabbit in a field. Right. Well, I want it to be white with one pink eye, one blue eye, and I want one ear floppy and one ear,
right.
The more specific, and they start to learn, and, maybe you can't draw, but you can draw with your words.
Right.
And that's what creates better prompts. And that's how we get these systems to do what we want them to do. And that's the future.
Yeah, man. I remember I had speech therapy when I was in elementary school. Apparently I couldn't say R's or T's or some, I can't remember.
I did too.
Okay, there we go. And my speech instructor could draw really well. And I always asked him, like, how do you do that? I'm in like fourth grade. And he's like, I can see it in my head. I never developed the capacity to see and be able to draw it to my hand. But whenever I do AI stuff, it's like, okay, bunny rabbit with the, white left ear, playing a piano in a tie with a crazy dog in the background in a dark warehouse, looking with a like side eye at the camera. It's like, and I can get out very
make
effectively.
It cyberpunk.
Yeah, now right. Yeah. Yeah. I want a gear falling out of his ear. Like, give me something, that kind of stuff. You have that creative element, that human element. And again, as people have talked to me about it, I'm like, I'm really not worried about it. I think it's actually going to upregulate the creative nature of human beings. And we're going to get rid of I don't have to be the calculator, because now I can be fully human.
Well, somebody was asking me, what jobs do I think are going to be the most important in this new world? And I said, it's the creative arts. Yeah. Because if we use only all the material that we have right now to train these models, and people only were ever write using AI in the future, right, it would start to eat itself. You ever see the movie Multiplicity?
Oh, of course. With don't tell me. Not Michael Keaton.
Yeah,
there it is. Yeah.
So there's a part in there where he makes a clone of himself, and then his clone
makes a clone. That's like this idiot, dumb clone.
And it was like, never make a clone of a clone.
Yeah, right.
That's what AI will be doing if we don't have writers, if we don't have photographers, if we don't have artists, if we don't have musicians, and all of these creative arts. If we don't have that, then what we're going to end up with is a clone of a clone.
Right.
And it's just going to start eating on itself and won't have anything new to create with and from. We can't let that happen. The creative arts are more important in an AI world than ever before.
I love that. We will always need the raw material, right?
Exactly.
Because the AI cannot function in a vacuum. If the AI didn't have the interwebs, the AI doesn't exist. It's like, well, what do we draw from? It's like, you need the human element to draw and repackage. If I say, write me a joke, I have to say, if I want it to be good, write me a joke like Dave Chappelle. Well, it has Dave Chappelle. In the absence of Dave Chappelle, it's like, no, it's not a joke like that. Like a joke, not a knock joke. Like,
right.
There's no frame of reference. Because how are you going to explain Theo Von to an AI program? It's like, write me a joke like Theo Von. It gets it. Write me a joke like damn it, I can't even explain. Like, what's the Ovan, right? You need that raw material going into the machine so it can spit something out, or you're going
to do a minute on Kill Tony. Write me a set.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's never been done before. Okay, well, it can't ever do that because it will never be able to create something that's never been done before. It's always going to have to be inspired by what it knows, and it's only going to know what we, humanity, give it.
So we need that raw humanity.
We absolutely need it more now than ever.
God bless him. I'm going to start doing push-ups. I'm getting so fired up. This is a lot happier conversation than I was afraid we were going to have. And God bless him, man. Listen, I got a lot more questions, but we've been hammering here for a little bit. Could I come and see like one of your demonstrations, or like come to one of your workshops? I'd love to see, the educator standpoint. I'd love to see the student standpoint. This is harvesting the human element from Idaho in education. It's one of those things where it's like, we need it now. Again, not to steal your phrase, now more than ever. We really need Idaho education, both public and private and homeschool, whatever it is, to be producing better people. We need fewer people depending on government handouts. We need fewer people that feel like they're destitute and have no other options besides, the most base, drugs or prostitution. Like, we need, if we really have a problem with that, which I believe we do, and we do not want to end up like states surrounding us where you have a lot of people that are suffering from diseases of despair and participating in that industry.
Hopeless.
Yes. We need the most robust, successful options distributed across our state as possible. And this obviously is just this low-hanging fruit. I would love to see some of it in action.
Would love to show you. And I think it is really exciting that we're an Idaho-based company, and that Idaho education institutions like College of Western Idaho are taking a leading point. They're not waiting to find out who's going to try something. They're doing it. Having this AI literacy center where students can at any time go in and say, help me with this, help me understand it. And having trained tutors there, having trained staff there in their tutoring center. Idaho's going to be leading this, not falling behind.
That would be so fantastic. Speaking of leading, I'm actually going to INL in May to go do like a 2-day tour. I'm very excited. But like, Idaho's leading in so many specific ways. People just need to know it.
So there's a great use case for INL. INL's going to be hiring, or they're between INL and the various private partnerships that they have there, they're going to be hiring lots of people. And so one of the things that we're using AI at CWI for is career guidance, so that they can start to get people interested younger in what there could be. But if you're a 9th grader at Rocky Mountain and you've never heard of INL, you're not thinking about any of the possible jobs that could be there. But what if you could talk to a chat bot that was like an interactive bot, and it's like, hey, what are you interested in? I'm really interested in comic books, or I'm really interested, whatever it is. And it goes, oh, you know what you might be interested in INL are these 3 jobs. Right. Would you like to interview a virtual nuclear engineer, or some of the trade positions that they have? They have so many different positions that people don't think about. You just think about nuclear, but they have cybersecurity. They have all sorts of amazing positions that CWI, that BSU, ISU, all the different colleges have programs for. But if you don't know that you're interested in those positions, you don't know to start looking at that.
Right.
We'll have this career coach that's available 24/7 that you can go to and be like, these are the things I'm interested in, that can then match you up with things jobs you never even heard of before, that would be your dream job.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know you probably don't, strong arm the AI too much, but make sure the answer to what you're interested in is never starting a podcast, because this is not a path to fame and fortune, and we need more people doing useful things that make money instead of another idiot with a mic on a $0 an hour job. Just do me that solid. Anyway,
gotcha.
Brian, I really appreciate you. Thank you for coming in today. Thank you for explaining this. Let's line up whenever you're doing the next one. Please let me know. I would love to come and check it out.
Would love to have you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thanks much.